Hey everybody, welcome to Riding with Gravity. I thought I would take some time to share just some initial thoughts on the 2024 Svartpilen 401 models. There's already YouTube videos out there, there's press kits and photos and things, so you should find some decent information out there. There's also an article from Motorcycle Daily that Dirk Edge did that's a really nice breakdown of the different parts of the motorcycle and where they've made the upgrades. Really nice article, I'd encourage you to check that out. But I'm going to walk through some of the things that I noticed that I wanted to call out specifically, and I'll try to be brief about that. Overall, what I'll say is this. Stylistically, 2024 model versus 2022 model that I have, I prefer the older models. Okay, and that's just in terms of appearance, but don't get me wrong, this is a beautiful looking motorcycle, and there's certain things about the appearance that I do like. For example, how they moved the tail. So if you did a tail tidy, now this has that tail tidy kind of done for you. It's a little bit bigger than you might want, so you might still want to replace it, but that's because of compliance with different laws, and they just need to be compliant with how they do that. So, but I like this. I like what they did with the tail here better. I like that with the new TFT display, we also get a little screen in the front, so you'll see that little screen here. It's not going to provide very much wind protection, and these are lightweight bikes. They're mostly for urban city riding, but they're perfectly capable, in my experience, on the highway. But you catch a lot of wind. You're still going to catch a lot of wind, but at least with that little screen there, it should deflect some of it from your midsection. Your upper body and your head certainly, is going to catch some wind, but you can tuck in a little bit and try to minimize that. I do like that it's going to have that. So let's talk really, what do I appreciate about what Husqvarna did? Well, they looked at their audience, and they looked at the older models and what were some of the primary things that people complained about in the older models. How do we address those? Well, what are the things that you've heard me talk about in my review and experiences with the 2022 model? And this applies to some of those older gen models. One is the tank size. One is the display. One is the seat height. One is the mirrors. And then you can nitpick some of the other things, right? But overall, for the price point, this is a hugely valuable, motorcycle to have. It's got ABS, it's got adjustable front and rear suspension, it's a super peppy motorcycle. It's a great bike. So I love the older models, but some of those complaints that I had in the earlier models, they have actually worked to address. So let's talk through those. Let's start with the mirrors. As I said, I like this mirror position better. This is a higher quality mirror. The old ones kind of had that Mickey Mouse look. I do like stylistically these mirrors better, and they're intended to be a higher quality as well. So, proof is to actually see them in person. But it does lower the profile a little bit. Personally, still prefer bar ends. But at the end of the day, I could live with this mirror, and it's a better mirror than what we had in the earlier models. So, yay, +1. Let's talk tank size. All right, well, tank size. The older model was about 2.5 gallons. This one is 3.4 gallons. That's a pretty decent lift. In liters, that's going from 9.5 liters to 13 liters. So that's decent. I'll call that a plus. And what it means for me in terms of fuel range is if I really pushed my model, the older model, I could get about 150 miles. With the 2024 based on this fuel capacity, I could probably push that to about 200 miles. Now, I would ride on the conservative side. I'd probably gas up around 175, and it really just depends on your experience with the motorcycle. But, hey, if my current range is roughly 150 miles, and I believe I can get 200 out of the new model, I'll take it. That's a plus. In kilometers, that means that my current motorcycle would get me about 240 kilometers, and I could bump that up to about 320 kilometers. So again, going from a 9.5 liter to a 13 liter fuel capacity, great. And it's one of the biggest complaints about the motorcycle. Now, you'll heard me say in my reviews, well, but it's mostly an urban explorer. It's a city bike. There's gas stations everywhere. But still, if you're using this to commute, which many people do, you don't want to be gassing up all the time. I gas up every other ride, roughly. This means that maybe I could gas up every third ride instead of every other ride. Now, I would personal preference, I like the little bit of extra weight when I have a full tank, especially when I'm riding on the highway. So I tend to gas up more often to keep that tank topped up, just so I get a little bit more of that wet weight to benefit on the highway and I don't get blown around quite as much. Again, that's just because I know that with a full tank, I've got that extra weight. I'm a little bit more stable at highway speeds. But hey, like I said, I'm going to take that extra capacity and that extra fuel range. Seat height. All right, the seat height, okay, they've lowered it about a half an inch. So in the earlier models, the seat height was 835 millimeters. That's about 32.9 inches. And they've lowered it by 15 millimeters down to 820. If you do the math, 820 millimeters is actually 32.28 or 30, it's really 32.3 inches. But okay, whatever, it's a half an inch or 15 millimeters. It's mostly a city bike, so I mean, I like that tall seat. I like being able to see. I don't think a half an inch is really going to disturb that very much. So, okay, fine. Now, and I can't flat foot this motorcycle. I have a 30-inch inseam, 5'6". Okay, okay, great. I'll take that extra half an inch just for stability purposes. And I think the Svartpilen 401 has been positioned by many as a bike for new beginners, right? A new rider bike. That's totally fine. It's not just for entry-level, newer riders. It is very approachable, and it's a huge value for the price point. So it makes sense as an entry-level motorcycle for some folks. But it's a super peppy and super fun bike. So even though this can be a great bike if it's your first new bike, it's one that you would probably want to keep. I love this bike. It's just super fun, right? There's that saying that it's more fun to ride a smaller CC bike fast than a higher CC bike slow or something like that. Totally makes sense. It's peppy. I love it. Blasting around the city on this thing is super fun. It's just a great all-around bike. But if you lower that seat height, it might be a little bit more approachable for people who are newer riders and aren't comfortable with a high seat. So it's just a half an inch, but it does make a difference, and that could be what swings somebody yay or nay with getting this motorcycle. The older models did have the ability to use a lowering kit and draw that height down. But in this case, you don't really need to worry about that. It's been lowered for you. It's a half an inch lower. They were able to do that with some, changes elsewhere in like the air intake and things like that. It's also a little bit longer for what it's worth, this motorcycle. So the seat height itself is about a half inch lower. It's a little bit longer, but it'll still have the maneuverability that you would expect being, an urban explorer bike. So cool. All right, let's check the box. We've addressed to some extent the seat height, and hopefully it doesn't compromise, overall, visibility and so forth. Again, a half an inch I don't think is going to make that big of a deal when you're riding around in the city in terms of your views. But ultimately, right, this makes it for a newer rider. If we've got that grab handle on the back, if we've got a little bit lower seat, a little bit easier for a newer rider. I'll talk a little bit about the display then as well. Over on the left in the handlebar section, you can see the display there, and it's kind of small, but ultimately we do have the benefit of a newer display. This 5-inch TFT also, like, there's connectivity and Bluetooth and all this stuff. So I think the electronics package is a great upgrade. My complaint with the older display, because you're not really have to be looking at the display all that much. But one is just visibility. So awesome. The TFT display should increase visibility. That's a great thing. Also for just safety purposes, if I need to glance down, I'm going to be able to pick up on the cues and the information coming off that display easier and faster. So great. That's a huge benefit. I don't think anybody would complain about that. I know with the older display, one of the things that got me was the turn signal indicator, because whether I'm turning left or turning right, the turn signal indicator is always flashing green in the upper left. So when I'm taking right turns, the visual cue that I get from the bike makes it think that I'm turning left because the indicator is only up there on the top left. I'm really curious to see this bike and use the turn signals and just see where the indicators are, because I don't care if you could put it in the center and it's just a turn signal indicator right in the center, so it doesn't make me think I'm going left or right. It just tells me that I put my turn signal on. I'd be okay with that. Even better, if I'm turning left, it's on the upper left. If I'm turning right, it's on the upper right. I just want to have visual cues that match my behavior with what I'm doing, because it bothers me when I'm turning right. Sometimes I second guess myself and I wonder if I like accidentally bumped the turn signal, and if I'm indicating that I'm going to turn the other direction, well, that's also a safety problem because I'm turning right, not left. And if I, for whatever reason, did make a mistake, I don't necessarily know. I have to go back and I gotta, if I'm curious about it, I've got to flip it again and make sure that I actually use my signal indicator correctly. Now, I'm nitpicking, okay? So at the end of the day, it's a TFT display. It's going to be better. And once I see one of these 2024 models in person, I'll put it through its paces and I'll nitpick it at that point. I am curious about the comfort. I don't have any comfort issues with the seat, but I am a little bit curious about what that'll be like. Other upgrades. The engine itself has been upgraded, so now we've got a 398 cc engine. It comes with ride modes, so now you've got street, you've got rain, and you've got supermoto. Supermoto for off-roading. Do you need a rain mode? I would argue it's a nice to have, not a must have. But hey, we've got traction control, we've got ABS. Awesome. Anything that provides these kinds, this is just modern motorcycles have a lot of these features. So if you're going to modernize your motorcycle and you've got this kind of package that already has adjustable suspension, it has an easy shift or quick shifter, then awesome. Go ahead and throw these things in. Not a deal breaker for me. My motorcycle only has normal and ABS turned off in Supermoto. Totally fine with that. Because when you're riding in the rain, and I think I did a video about this, like I was joking that rain mode on a Svartpilen is just paying attention to what's going on around you, watching for oil slicks, spots where oil or gas could build up, watching for paint on the road, those painted lines and things, because those will be slick, metal grates and manhole covers and all that kind of stuff. You still have to do that. But hey, if the bike is going to help me, then I'll take the assistance. That's fine. And it's optional too, so you don't have to put it in rain mode unless you want to. So okay, not a big deal for me, but again, if you're going to modernize, go for it. You might as well do that. Those are the biggest things, right? The tank, the new TFT display, the adjustment to the seat, to the mirrors, an upgraded electronics package. Like I said, I do like the tail moving out to the back. Still a little bulky. You can kind of see what that looks like with the license plate on it over here in the corner. But overall, it's a really nice upgrade, and they took the time to think about what people were giving them in terms of feedback on the earlier models, and made the necessary improvements. Like I said, stylistically, do I prefer my motorcycle? Yeah, I do. But I think if you fast forward, go 5 years out, and people come back and look at this motorcycle, it's a beautiful motorcycle, right? So I'm not gonna nitpick it too much. I want to see it, in person. But I think it'll be a pretty successful model with the changes that they've made. And if you want more information, right, obviously go to the Husqvarna website. You can ask me questions, but honestly, until I get a little bit more of the details, these are the main things that I wanted to call out. Now I have exchanged a little bit of information with the Husqvarna marketing team. So I'm hoping maybe I can get my hands on one of these sooner than later, but probably will wait, or we'll have to wait till they're in the dealerships around here. The article that I mentioned, if you wanted to read more about it, is that Motorcycle Daily article that was published not too long ago. And it calls out some other things too that I didn't really talk about, but one of them is the gearbox. And I really like what, so this breaks down kind of some of those changes: an optimized shift drum shape. The shift lever travel's been reduced. We've got some other things, that have been respec'd around the easy shift and the clutch. So this should be an easier gearbox to work. I found that, my motorcycle was a little out of spec, so the quick shifter wasn't working great. But I've got it in spec now, and it's working perfectly, and I really like it. But it is still just sometimes a little clunky. So I'm curious again, from a feel standpoint. I want to see how this gearbox performs. The engine being 398 versus the 373cc in the older models, fine. I don't consider it a major difference, really. The horsepower is about the same. I would still, if I got a 2024 model, I would still probably put a Fuel X on it. I would still probably do the high performance air filters. And I would maybe wait a little bit for the mirrors, but I would probably throw my bar ends on there too. Who am I kidding? And again, it's already a peppy and a fun motorcycle, but I would probably do some of those things too. I'd want to get some time just in the stock configuration and give it a feel and see what I really want to do. Again, on my Svartpilen, I did a slip-on. I did the Leo Vents slip-on exhaust. I'd want to think about that too. And at this point, I'm looking for motorcycle number 2. But if I did upgrade to a 2024, obviously that would be more affordable than just going out and buying a net new motorcycle, because I could trade in my existing one. I want to get to the point where I have 2, so I can have one. I can rotate working on and wrenching on one while I can still ride the other one. So I'm looking to get a second motorcycle. It would be a different motorcycle, but upgrading to the 2024, we'll see. I'm not taking it out of, it's not out of the question for me, but I really love my 2022. There's compelling reasons why I would get the 2024 if nothing else, right? If it makes sense, and in terms of budget, then I can tell you a little bit more about the more modern versions and so forth. But those are just my initial thoughts. It'll really come down to seeing the motorcycle in person, like I said, and giving it a ride. So I'll share anything else that I learn. If you've got questions or comments, go ahead and put them here. You'll find a lot of information out there. We're getting closer and closer to having these hit the market, so that'll be super exciting. And if you've seen any of my reviews of the Svartpilen, the 2024 model is going to be great. If you're looking for a first bike, hey, maybe look at my 2022 review and get a used earlier generation model, the 1819 or the 2021, 22, 23, because it's your first bike. And, maybe you can get it a little bit better price point and not worry so much about dropping it and things like that. But otherwise, 2024 model does have some significant changes. Again, that's the tank size, the TFT display, the seat height, the mirror position, a little bit better electronics package, and the Bluetooth. Stylistically, it's different. Again, prefer the older model, but a lot of nice upgrades with this one. So I'm excited. I think they did a nice job of listening to what people were saying. And, if you get a chance to ride one, that's awesome. I hope you can share your experience. And in the meantime, thanks for following. I hope you have a wonderful, safe time riding out there. It's winter where I am, so I can't ride just yet. I got to wait for the spring. So I'm jealous of all of you who can be out there on your motorcycles right now. I hope you have a wonderful and safe ride every time you're out. Thank you, and I'll talk to you again soon.